Hey everybody, welcome back to Big Campaign Stories. I'm Jeff, your GM, but today we have a lore episode for you, as well as I have two guests, Marshall and Ponce.
Hello. Sorry.
So no lightsabers today, but we have questions. Ponce, what are our topics?
Well, I think recency bias here, but I want to know more about Sam. I don't know if that counts as lore, but like, what's going on with Sam?
All right. So Sam, coming from the name Sample, is a small extraplanar creature born from a necrotic sludge filled with negative energy that Fours took at the end of season 1 to bring back to his room. Kept in a small terrarium and fed candy. It's just kind of a small, monstrous thing that he's held on to.
Yeah, he's kind of a pet. He's like sort of friendly, it seems like.
He is now.
Yeah, which I was surprised. I think I was expecting it to be like a sort of a monster, but I guess that is how like taming works, so that makes sense. Well, thank you. That was just a thing on my mind. Something else that I've been curious about, because I think you do such a good job in campaign of like reminding the players and like then also the audience using like the saving squid billboard, like really it's like sort of creates like a sense of place within everything. And so I have been curious about the different brands. There's been a lot of Punch Junction talk, and there's like the Law Hamburgers. And just sort of wondering if those are all like Amon things, or if there's sort of separate chains, or if it's kind of like, I guess like kind of like what we have in the real world, where there's like a lot of these huge chains and there's like a few family-owned smaller chains, or what's the,
We didn't really have corporations like this until Big Campaign 6. 7 is though where they finally came into like full bloom, with all the different corporations and food places and Saving Squid and all that. The idea there was to show the growth that kind of could be done under a capitalist society to some extent that actively was growing against each other. At least that was my intent as the DM. It's not to say they're all part of Amon, but that's why we have the House Wars. We have different corporations kind of fight each other. And so those corporations that are here are ones that won those fights and own more. So Saving Squid history would be them fighting their way through the Safeways, the QFCs, those places to become the big company, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that brings kind of another question, is especially with the new, corporations being part of House Wars and all of that, is there a corporation that could challenge Amon, or is it kind of now, are we just living in a world where you're your own company until Amon decides that you're interesting?
Effectively, yes. If you're small enough, you will not have to worry about Amon coming after you. But if you start to get in that realm to threaten them, then that starts that process, right? Either they buy you out or we start a house war. As far as opposing companies, so Mon is the biggest in the world. They also have things like Dalam Crow, Vith Innovations, Umbaro Pharmaceuticals, Basque Technologies, Golden Communications, Mercadine, and Balanced Engineering. These are all corporations that filled in spots that Amon didn't already have. So Amon itself didn't engage with them to fight them because it would have to start from the ground up.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then at this point, it's sort of, they have like presumably a working relationship and don't see the need to like take on more responsibility for something that is being handled.
Correct. Yeah. As far as like those corporations will not expand outside of their domain. I guess for DMs out there, this is where our world shifted from gods to corporations, and then corporations have domains.
Mm.
Amon is the one, though, that their domain, they do not want overlapping with any other domain if they can help it.
And Amon, if I'm remembering, is named after the god of like consumption or something.
Yes, of the original 9 gods of the Zorain Empire, Amon is the chaotic evil god, the consumer.
The consumer, yeah, okay. Appropriate for the capitalism.
And now that's their bread and butter, the consumer.
Yeah, that's cool. That also, I think, that brings up another question that I think that we have talked about before. But one of the episode that I was on, we were talking about the promise, and I think, I don't know if I just like missed it, but I don't fully feel like I understood what the promise is. Is it like some sort of a like religious binding, like a thing that creates? Does it like create a thing, or is it like a kind of like guidelines? I just wasn't like super clear on like the functional kind of idea of it.
So, magic is, for the most part in my world, it's kind of based on intent, right? If you have a wish spell, it's what you mean to have happen kind of means more than what is happening.
Yeah.
So the promise was originally created by the liches that ruled the world in Big Campaign 3 to give the people an option back, right? If enough people put their intent into this wish, they could alter how the system works. So if you wanted to undo a house or make a new house, if enough people agreed on it, you would use the promise to take away that power from the liches.
Interesting. So they created that as like a way to sort of like a negotiation with the people.
Correct. Kind of the idea of the liches back then being wizards that became mechanical liches to gain their immortality in order to make the civilians not rebel against them, gave them the power to basically veto them. But of course, as generations go by, that power gets lessened as people don't use it. And so eventually the liches just have control. As they took away, I think in Big Campaign 3, nobody started with the ability to read.
Mm.
And so they had to spend skill points to learn how to read common.
Interesting. And so then the promise being lost kind of, it no longer has, it can't have an effect? And now that Amon, presumably, and Typh control the promise, because it sounds like it's like a thing that is just sort of available to the people, but until people like know about it and like believe in it or whatever, it couldn't actually do anything.
Correct, yeah. Without somebody to either give intent or give guidance to it, it's effectively useless.
Okay, so yeah, so then Amon Amon can give guidance to it now, so that's perfect. It's like, that's what we want.
Yeah, it's control through inaction. As long as nobody brings it up and nobody puts attention to it, it kind of just fades away until somebody hopefully can unite people or groups to put focus towards that to make the changes needed.
Interesting. I think I feel like I have to stop asking questions now because I'm gonna start getting into future lore. I like that. The only other note that I have for a question is the spider forest, which I don't remember if we learned about that, but I love the spider forest. Why are there so many spiders there?
From a DM side, I wish I could give you a better lore reason other than...
I mean, sometimes there just needs to be spiders. I get it.
I kind of really like the idea of an arachnid-based kind of ecosystem. Because, like, I love all the different variations of spiders. So, I've often used the spider forest as just this kind of playground to see how to replace so many creatures that we normally expect in an ecosystem with arachnids or arthropods. Because there are violent crabs up on the shoreline that I've used before.
I mean, the spider forest has been around for years, too. I mean, it was established in Big Campaign 3 as one of the upper border of the area.
Mm-hmm. And I think that tied in with the Lich-controlled area of the Spider Forest kind of blocked exit to other countries and other places. The entire part of Big Campaign 3 only took place in the Zorian Empire, versus Big Campaign 2 and 4 went everywhere.
Oh yeah, three was very contained in the small area, which was a good change because in Big Campaign 2 and even 1, we spent a lot of time traveling.
Yeah. It does. I think the one of the reasons I think that the Spider Forest was like interesting to me, other than the fact that it's the Spider Forest, is that it feels like sort of a through line callback to less futuristic sort of fantasy RPG, TTRPG, because it has like I feel like the Spider Forest in this like futuristic world with light swords and all sorts of other stuff. Like it's like a nice sort of familiar problem to have when everything else is just all out there, all over the place.
Yeah, I like them a lot more as a flavor of like, kind of if you've ever been to those, Milton Freewater, Idaho areas of where people are like, oh yeah, you just get coyotes. And for here, it's like, oh yeah, you'll just get a wolf spider the size of a German Shepherd who runs through your yard. It's why you got to lock up your chickens.
Yeah.
Just don't worry, but don't bother them.
Yeah, it's like you can take a shot at them. If you kill one, no one cares. And so, like, if the campaign ever goes over to like Corellia, which is a lot more nature influenced, you'll see a lot more of high tech mixed with jungles.
Yeah, that was fun in the backstory episode that y'all did for Marshall.
That was a lot of fun.
Nice big bomb explosion. Always a good thing.
A little excessive, but that's the way I roll.
Which actually, if I'm allowed to just keep asking questions here, is a great tie-in to the next question that I thought of, which is, we just learned about the Corellian, is that correct? Corellian?
Mm-hmm.
Like crime syndicates. Sounds like very cutting edge. And it sounds like they operate sort of similarly to the way that you described the corporations that we're more familiar with. Is that like true, or are they also, or can you answer? Are they also guided by some sort of similar type of like the Promise, right? Is this sort of robot lich god thing? Is there like a similar type of thing for that, or is it just good old-fashioned gang violence?
So Corellians, as a racial aspect of the game and as kind of a culture, they're very built upon competition and tradition. So in where our players are at, you would make a new corporation and it would hopefully fight others to become the best corporation around, versus Corellian system would be more built on, this is already a business here, I would like to take over this business, and you'd still inherit the title, the mantle of it. You actually did learn about the Kabuto Syndicate in the House War episodes. Yuno Shin is from there.
Oh yes, I forgot about that.
And so he represented kind of the Corellian Mafia trying to come over to Zorain. And so for that, you see kind of, I think I brought up a little bit in a recent episode of, if like a new gang comes in and overthrows one of the syndicates, they still take their name on, but they change it to fit their behavior. So if, let's say, you had a chaotic evil leader of this syndicate and they were horrible and violent and monstrous, and they were the we'll use the Kabuto Syndicate for now, for that's easy, it's a name we've referenced. If a good criminal were to come in and take it over and be neutral good, it would still be the Kabuto Syndicate. It just would now start replacing its actions with that, and that would change their PR, effectively.
Yeah.
So the Corellians aren't going to make a new criminal syndicate to overthrow it. They're going to try to overthrow it from within, because their traditions believe in what's already been made of, we don't want to get rid of what we have, but we can make it better, but you have to fix it from inside as opposed to outside.
New people, new mission statements.
Yeah, and so it feels corporate a bit, but it's more the idea of like, I'm trying to like visually explain it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of Corellian politics and structures are very much like Theseus' ship. You replace parts, they're still the same thing, but by replacing these parts, you make a new thing out of it. But you don't get rid of what was already there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. So it's very changing it from within and maintaining the sort of like history.
Yeah, it's a meritocracy bound in tradition, but it's not bound in nostalgia. So they're perfectly fine with getting rid of that which did not work to make their new system. But they don't want to get rid of the names or concepts of the old system if they still represent the people.
Yeah. Oh, so I just thought of a really stupid comparison. It's kind of like the Doctor from Doctor Who.
Oh, okay. I was like, there's quite a few doctors. I don't know which one we're talking about.
No, the Doctor.
Yeah, I think that would be a fair comparison. A lot of Corlean systems are built on them being able to be destroyed and rebuilt as still themselves, but better.
Yeah. Huh. I like that. Has there ever been like major war between countries? I feel like maybe you've mentioned it before, actually, and now I'm just.
There are wars, but they're generally smaller. But most of the most of the issues that the world has suffered in the game have come through planar effects, which is why I don't have like a lot of racism or a lot of stratification through that, because the world's been united against Mechanus or the Harmonium or the Liches. Like, there are threats that demand everyone to be a part of, and so the world doesn't segregate as much because they've always been united against larger outside threats.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. There was something also. I was just scrolling to the bottom of one of the lore pages here, and I see Zel Annulus. I don't know how to say that.
Oh, XELANUS?
ANNULUS or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, Zalanis.
Zalanis. Oh, that's so funny. I have heard you say that.
Yeah, so this actually goes back to Big Campaign 1. When we all started the game, the plane was called Ovanis, and then the world kind of ended. There was a massive planar-wide destruction.
Whose fault was that?
Marshall, go for it.
It was my fault.
I knew it was your fault.
I would not say it was literally Marshall's character's fault. There were other things in play, but I'm not going to pretend he didn't have a hand partially in it.
I helped the bad guy for quite a while.
Ooh.
So the world ended, but the players, at that point, we were playing the first version of the campaign, and I had access to the Epic Handbook in 3.0, so we kept going. I think we stopped the game around level 30, and the players were gods, but they were still fighting against other antithetical gods that wanted to destroy their world. So they defeated those gods. They finally broke everything through. Using epic spell seeds, they rebound the plane and created the world again, tying it back together with a world tree that's roots bound all the parts of the material plane back together, which meant that the world didn't end, which means the previous death kind of got fired, but didn't get to go anywhere. And so a new death, the god of extinction, Azdan, got created to take over the new world, which is called Zalanis. And from Big Campaign 2 on, the players have always been on Zalanis, or their Zelenites, as other planes and other realities call them.
Yeah, because our plane, the one we started on, Ovanis, was fractured from Zalanis originally. There was, I think, the original plane of Zalanis was fractured into 5, if I remember right.
Correct.
And we were on the good version of the plane, or the good-ish.
I'm realizing, so the one I was originally asking about is actually, I can say it properly, I hope, but it's Zelanolis, which is a moon that is only for the super rich and cool.
Yes, in Big Campaign 6, as corporations were on the rise, we got into a we got into a war with Mechanus, where they were finally trying to bind the plane to prevent it from being able to escape and infect other planes. And this is where we brought in like the Fall of Revelation, which is the celestial plane, having seen the future of the Zelenites destroying realities. And so all this stuff was done with the intent to hopefully bind the plane to make them mortal. Players at the time had killed a few like minor avatars and deities that had access to the ability to create laws for the universe. My players at the time cleverly used those laws to say, cool, if on this plane we can't get above level 10, if we're all bound under a certain power level on this plane, so does everything that comes here. Which meant when the gods showed up to try to punish the world, they were all reduced to level 10 as well, and the players harvested them.
They're the good guys.
And once we got all these minor gods, once they left the plane, they got to experience their godhood. And so that is where we got the party god, who made the Zlatan moon, opposed to the Scorn moon, which is a horrible place of nightmares and fears. We got the Zlatan moon, which was a unique party atmosphere that you have to get through only through being invited from the gods that hang out on the Dreadnought, which is a flying ship full of party people. And if you're cool enough, you can be invited to the moon to go party with gods.
Nice. How's their PR?
The god who made the party moon ran and actually created the Dalam Crow Company, which you've heard of the Crows, because they're the one that Oswald flipped the car over in episode 5. Even Clash of Crits, when they came over, Desmond Crow is one of the crows from Dalam Crow.
Cobbler came from the Crow House, didn't he?
That's what I was just remembering, yeah.
Yep, correct.
Cobbler's a crow.
Oh my god. Yeah, that was I actually just re-listened to that episode because I was driving and I was like, I just want to listen. I just need to throw something on. And yeah, that was a good one.
Cobbler in that episode is actually played by Fours' older brother.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, so we'll bring him back for more Cobbler episodes.
Which everybody's excited for.
Everybody, yeah. I feel like there should be like a 1 to 5 ratio at least.
It's just a good thing Cobbler wasn't at HQ when everything went down.
Yeah, I feel like Cobbler's gotten pretty lucky a few times. But maybe, Jeff, you're just afraid of the backlash if anything bad happens.
I mean, there are a few ways to visually or audibly explain a bad guy, and it's usually if they kill a pet.
Oh, yeah.
So if Cobbler is to pass away, it will be while being under control of a player who is making that choice actively.
You're like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. If Kyle, while using Cobbler, decides to use those powers to save some lives while ending the cat, awesome. But for the most part, Cobbler will be roughly safe until that choice is made in person.
You mentioned the level 10 cap, and that's still in effect here?
Yes, it is still in effect here, except for we do use Gestalt rules. So HP caps at 10, base attack, a lot of saves. But I'm more than happy to give players more tricks and abilities. And so from a meta sense, I'm fine with players learning more cool ways to do stuff. So I'm perfectly fine, like, once players hit level 10, at the end of basically every session, saying, like, cool, pick a new feat or pick a new thing, but you just can't get more hit points or to hit chance.
Yeah, I think that's like a good way to sort of balance without, I think there's, balance gets a little bit... I 100%
know that my campaigns are not balanced.
Oh yeah,
I think they're fair.
Exactly, yeah. Because I was gonna say, I think balance is. I also sort of like am not. I don't know. I don't like balance but I do like I think fair is a good way to say it. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite compliments I've ever gotten as a GM came from Sean well before we made the podcast, which was, I think you're a very fair GM. And that was something I could really enjoy of like, cool, they all trust me to tell a good story and to do well without favoring anybody. Even though, I mean, I like all my friends, of course, but it's very easy for any GM to find certain characters for certain situations that they just like more.
I mean,
yeah,
I would have to agree with Sean. You are a very fair DM, and even with the favorites talk that we, or not even favorites, just players being more communicative than other players, you get that. Well, you're putting more into it, so you might get a little more out of it, just because there's all that communication and build up behind it. Versus somebody's like, "I'm here to play. Let's do this." And you're still fair to everybody. Everybody's got their part, but I had a point there. But
no,
we like you, Jeff. The point is we like you.
Yes.
No, but I think that's a fair point actually to say for any GM. Players that communicate more give us more to work with, and they give us more to put back in.
Oh yeah.
And so it's great to have friends that say, "Oh, I love the session. That was great. Thanks," and they walk away. It becomes very easy to kind of, as a GM, have a hard time planning for them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
From a GM side, I've been very lucky to have a lot of players that communicate a lot with me, so that I know how to design my games to work my stories to make sure I can include everyone in it, to, in the long run, create longer stories, because it's my players who help me build the world.
But yeah.
From 1 to 2 to 3 to where we are now. And even our home game, we're playing in Big Campaign 8.
And we really affected the world there.
Yeah. But it's through all the communication that really helps. I think for the long run, for any player who's listening to this, just bullshit with your DM about what you like, don't like, and what you think's cool about their world, so they know where to kind of focus ideas.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I also have like a homebrew, world that I have been working in for a few years, and it's like my first homebrew world. Because when I started playing D&D specifically, it was just like a friend who showed me about it, and then I didn't know anyone else who wanted to play, and so I ended up having to be DM like the second time that I played D&D, and then I've been pretty much GMing ever since then, except for here and there. And so at this point, the world is really funny because there's a lot of Easter eggs that I put in that are really just for me, because I don't have the same player group. So I will have other players' characters as parts of the story or whatever. And there's all sorts of fun, weird things that have just been a player choice for their character, where they were like, I want to be a cleric, but I want to have gone to college. So I'm like, okay, yeah. So now clerics go to college, and that's a thing. And there's just all sorts of weird, different ways of affecting that, and that sort of freedom to create that can make a really sort of deep world, which I think is what initially made me enjoy big campaigns so much, was that it feels like everything has this it has at minimum 7 layers. It's very deep, and I think that's a really fun thing, and the player contribution is cool, knowing that, because I think then in game sometimes you hear about the other corporations, or Prism, or these other elements of the world, and there's always this curiosity of what was that did a player do that, and learning about the constant, and I think a different lore episode was a very funny and crazy thing to be oh yeah, someone sort of snuck out and did a thing because everyone else was taking too long to make a decision about it. I don't know if I remember that correctly, but that's how I remembered that story going.
Yeah, you're not too far off on it. It's very much giving a lot of players a lot of power in how to affect and change the world.
Yeah, I was going to touch on the world building really quick too, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Please, Marshall. I apologize.
No,
I have taken over most of this conversation.
No, it's okay. But that's as you were saying, Ponce, you were saying that you put Easter eggs in your world, and we could definitely have a lot of Easter eggs and just building in our world from all the years we're putting into it. The vaults from Dungeon Crawl that Amon was finding, or all the vaults and stuff from Big Campaign 3 that the Lich Gods had, and we've got little things like that that people have, either things from the past or things that the characters have created that sprinkle throughout the world and have changed it as we continue to play, basically.
Yeah, are there things for you, like Marshall, as a player? Do you feel like you catch those sort of callbacks pretty like easily, or does Jeff ever like veil them behind things so you're not, you're not sure, and then at some point it like clicks? I mean, for me, the Dungeon Crawl thing was like, obviously I have never been in another big campaign thing, but the Dungeon Crawl reveal was like, I had so much fun learning about that.
So I'm going to steal this from Marshall really quick, and I'm going to give it back to him.
Okay.
Marshall is effectively our big campaign historian. After every campaign, I give him all my notes, and he has all of them. And so it is very fun for me when I throw in really small, tiny, stupid references. Marshall will giggle to let me know that he knows them, and it makes me very happy. But Marshall, go ahead.
Yeah. No, yes. He throws in little references. He throws in big references sometimes. It's always fun as an old player in Big Campaign to find those things out. But Jeff also does a good job of introducing new and informing with what's going on in the world. So our new players that have joined in Big Campaign 5, 6, and 7 or so don't feel like they've missed out on stuff, because things kind of just fold in and get explained and add new layers to it. Yeah,
it's very I'm forgetting the name for it, but the folding steel blacksmithing.
Damascus. I was gonna say, have we ever talked really about Prism, or has it just been something in the back of the game? I don't think we've touched on it at all in any of the lores, have we?
We have not.
I feel like it was mentioned, maybe just in podcast. It was at some point, because I think I know somehow, or maybe we talk. I don't know. I feel like I know something about Prism, but I can't remember where I learned it. So, so I'm not going to say anything. But yeah, let's talk about Prism.
So we'll touch on it just a little bit, because I'm sure that could be its own entire lore episode.
Yeah,
this is just to whet the appetites of.
Yeah, so every episode of the podcast you're listening to is effectively the ground level version of what my players have already played through as Prism.
Yes,
I made an entire campaign as Prism. They all got murdered and taken out by Amon. The reason why they're terrorists happened. They all got to play through this as becoming terrorists of the Empire, while still trying to save the world from extraplanar threats, while dealing with the propaganda that prevents them from being known for being heroes. So all the fun, like when they turn on the news and you guys see Prism stuff, those are the players actually fought those encounters and defeated, like the water titan that's going off the coast and eating ships.
All the files that the Clash of Crits guys gave to Matilda was stuff that my character built and worked on.
Oh yeah, I've been very curious / excited about all those files.
Yeah, me too.
It sounds like good stuff.
Yeah, no, it's gonna lend itself to a lot of fun. We are approaching a excellent nexus for the both podcast and kind of where the campaign shifted as well. That hopefully everyone will enjoy and have fun with, and then the world is going to change pretty drastically.
And that's something I'm excited for to come up in the podcast. In Big Campaign 7, when we were playing as Prism, we hit a certain point and got more world-oriented versus just the Dust Banter area and everything. and it'll be interesting to see how the world's affected that we didn't see when we were dealing with other things in the game.
Yeah, that's like a very interesting sort of like Memento, or like any of those movies that you can watch and then watch again and have a totally different experience.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun designing the podcast to be what if you were Superman, but now you're playing the guy on the street.
Mm-hmm. I was just gonna say it's like the Avengers versus Defenders. You got the Avengers movies that all dealt with these world threats, and then you had Punisher and Daredevil right in Hell's Kitchen, focusing on this little section of the world where you hear about what the Avengers did. There was the thing in Harlem, and then the invasion, but you're still dealing with Kingpin and the Hand.
Oh, see, my mental image was, I know people aren't the biggest fan of these movies, but I kind of like them. The first Man of Steel movie where he's fighting Zod.
Yes.
And then the first Batman movie that they show Ben Affleck on the ground talking to the girl. You see the lasers going through the building, but in the fight with Zod, we saw those lasers from inside.
Yeah.
But in the Batman side, we saw like the people huddled together, panicked in the building as like two gods are fighting, shooting lasers at each other. They just explode through the building. And so I like the idea of turning a campaign into, what if you aren't these deific monsters that have the HP and base attack and powers to flip colossal monsters to fight Godzillas?
Yeah, what if you're Lucius?
Yeah, exactly. What if you're Lucius, where it's like, oh shit, is that a really strong 10-year-old? That could be a threat.
Or the lack of healing, so where we're injured for several sessions. Like, well, I'm I'm at half hit points and I shouldn't get into this fight, but
is there long healing? Like, is like a week or so of rest, would that do healing, or is it pretty much, if you like, depending on the types of injuries, you like have to seek out some sort of magical healing? Because you guys have done that a couple of times, but it's always been like very expensive and sort of hard to come by.
What I've done with Keegan is unless we specifically go to a hospital or a doctor or something, if we're sleeping or something, we'll do the rest and hit point regeneration there. But it's not quick, and especially some of the injuries that we've described as we're going through just kind of stay until he gets the time needed. And a lot of times it's when we've been really injured, like at the brew house. After that, we didn't have time to rest. We slept the night, got a couple of hit points there, but it was just on to the next thing, and then 3 days later we get to rest.
Yeah, so mechanically, like that night after the brew house, is that sort of like a short rest where you're like rolling hit dice kind of thing?
Oh, no. So since we're doing Pathfinder, there's no short rest.
Yeah, sorry, I was relating it to the system. I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's one of the more interesting things that 5e brought in, but it is something that I personally, I think my players have also kind of in the same realm. We don't like healing to be too easy because it just feels cooler, right? Like
it does.
It's like definitely scarier. You mentioned the Dark Souls sort of element to it.
Yeah, like if you lose 40 hit points and you only get your hit points back per level per night, at level 3, it's like, okay, cool. So I've got almost 2 weeks till I'm back at full health. But I have to get there and stop this bad guy in 9 days. I know I'm not going to show up and be healthy enough. I'm not going to be at full health. But I have to fight. I have to win.
Yeah.
And things like Keegan had to spend multiple weeks in the hospital because his stat damage.
Yeah.
Con loss.
Yeah. And the con loss, especially because con loss permanently reduces your hit points.
Yeah.
Until you get it back. So it means he can't heal it back faster. It's going to be 1 point per day until he gets back. In a hospital, though, 2 points per day. So after losing, 16 con?
Yep, 16 con. I was down to 3 con, which is why I made the choice that he would pass out versus just, I mean, he could have stayed up, but no, losing that much con after the battle, adrenaline wears off, just, you got to do it.
Yeah, that was a scary fight.
Yeah. Sean and I are both like, okay, we're gonna flip this table. We're gonna get this guy, get this girl, and take her down. And next thing we know, we're like, oh god,
She just cut that table into several pieces,
yeah.
and then she cut Sean into several.
Yes, she did.
Spoilers. Sorry.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you don't know that, I'm sorry. Spoilers. That's on you.
Yeah, this comes after it.
I mean, unless there's some person out there who listens to all the lore episodes first before.
Oh yeah, they're like,
listening.
I really want to know all the lore so that I can be informed.
And if you are that person, then I'm very sorry if I insulted or offended you. I think you're awesome, but Forrest got cubed.
He became like 12s or something. 16s, sorry, or no, cubed. Oh my god, it goes higher. I can't do math right now.
No worries. Any final questions, things we want to end on?
Well, I guess if it's not too big of a one, just sort of finishing up the healing thing, not the way that it happens naturally, but what's the deal with healing? Did that already get covered at some point, and I just don't remember?
It didn't quite get directly covered, and it's more of a side effect of the world as it's evolved. You played with Maddie, who played Medusa, and she is a cleric of Azdan and has access to healing. For the most part, though, since corporations have taken over and as gods have fallen by the wayside, because, kind of as I mentioned before, magic in my world is based on intent. It does mean that deities are based on belief. Gods exist because people believe in them, not because gods make things and demand them. That's from the meta sense. In-game sense, it's kind of a reverse grifter, right? The god has to convince you need to believe in them to get powers, but gods only exist because you believe in them.
And so because the world is now sort of believing in corporations, the gods don't have as much power to actually do that sort of thing.
Right, and as like pharmaceutical companies and other larger companies come up, they can provide pseudo forms of healing, whether it's drugs or medicine, then there's less reason to believe in a god. And so most of those deific characters, those who can channel, become corporate entities or corporate perks, right? Through Amon, our players will have more access to healing.
Yeah, which we've seen. Yeah, and then I think you said this in campaign, but I just wanted to confirm it. As far as everyone knows, the resurrection diamonds or whatever are not able to be made, other than the fact that we have seen some, but we don't know if those are old ones or something.
Diamonds exist because our world has volcanoes and coal and all this. And like, if you think about a plane that doesn't have a geothermic structure underneath, then where did diamonds come from?
Yeah.
Not there.
Right, but for them to be a material component means diamonds have to come from somewhere. That's why clerics use them. And so their restriction must come from either they're hard to create, or they're impossible to find, or they have to come from like extraplanar sources, because they can't come from natural areas.
Oh, so it's not so much I was thinking, I think when you had said that in the game, that it was like the magic to do the resurrection diamond didn't exist, but it's more that like diamonds aren't really like a thing that anyone knows how to find, and very few people could actually cast resurrection magic.
That as well, right? There's not high-level clerics because of the lack of gods and all that.
Yeah.
But material component-wise, a 500 GP diamond still has to technically be made through natural means, unless you can make them in a lab, and then they don't. Then that doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't. That was not the direction that I interpreted that. But I like that. Well, I think that's all the questions I can think of.
No, I think that's a solid one to end on. Les Marshall, do you got something fun to throw in?
No.
I'm looking at a map of the world map. I'm just gonna give us like a fun fact about Reprise.
Fun fact about Reprise. Reprise has a very strong kind of think of like German mountain town kind of setup, ski lodges, all that. But they also have a very strong community with the Yetis in the area. They stand as the kind of middle ground between God's face and their train system, construction, and the rest of the world. Because of that, used to be called Summit's Nest before they were destroyed by Mechanus and then rebuilt as a reprise during the Harmonium takeover. They actually do not exist as a city in BC 8.
Ooh.
Yeah, with that, Ponce, I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with us and bullshitting. And is there anywhere people can follow you? Tell us what you do. Give us them plugs, outlets, all that.
The only thing would be the delivery. I have a bicycle food delivery company here in Portland, so if anyone's in Portland and wants to get food delivered, you could check out CCCPDX. But I don't have any cool D&D stuff that I'm doing that you could check out, so just bikes.
Thanks for being a fan. Thanks for playing with us.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and asking a bunch of questions.
Oh yeah, I had a great time. I feel like if I like really went through and like re-listened to every episode, I could really come up with a lot of questions for you guys. So maybe I'll do that. Who knows?
Marshall, you got anything you want to drop down?
Thanks for listening, everybody. I do another podcast with my brother, Watch It Bro. We talk about movies and stuff, mostly movies.
Thank you all for listening. Hope you have a great summer. All right, bye. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. We're getting back into it. Our music, as always, is from Nihilord. You heard Consequences as our intro and outro, and Lore as the middle music. I hope everything's going well. All right, bye.